What's up, Hamody?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
You know what, man? We've been trying to do this for a while, and I'm glad finally you're able to, come on up here and sit down with me, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here.
And bro, you're a get. Everybody wants to talk to you. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a while, so I'm sure it's cooled down now. But when you first came into the United States, I'm pretty sure, man, it was like, everybody and their mother wanted to talk to you on their show.
It will be my pleasure. My pleasure to be here with you.
Well, so how long have you been in the United States now?
I got here in July 27, 2008.
2008?
In the United States, yep. Entered the United States after 6 years in Iraq, being in the war.
Yeah.
So I arrived here and started my life all new from all the chaos that I was in.
Yeah. Well, chaos. Tell us about that, man, because a lot of people don't know your story. I know, it's been over a decade since you've been in the United States, so... But like me personally, I just learned about you from my buddy Eric Tansey when he had you on with Joe, and that was they don't even do that show anymore because Tansey's all famous now doing his own thing. Yeah, and that was what, like 3-4 years ago, maybe. Yeah. So that's when you came up on my radar. Yeah. So
yeah. I honestly, it's I know my story has been an exotic, crazy story, unrare, to hear off, but it's not a surprise to an average life in the Middle East. The Middle East is like full of surprises, full of chaos and war. And when you have all these components of like war and chaos, dictatorship, all that stuff, your life is nothing but stories. Because the things you see are not just the normal things that an average American would see every single day. So, growing up, I had a kind of little normal childhood in a way, you could say, until, the first Gulf War broke out. Things were really kind of tough during that time. Iraq going into sections, all of that. The country couldn't afford to do much. You didn't have much food. Supplies were very short. We were blacked out from the whole world. It was really tough, Like, I think people don't know what that life is like, when you're limited on bread, you're limited on milk, you're limited on clothing, you're limited in every aspects of life. So, it was not easy, growing up. You knew you couldn't get certain things. It's not like, today an American child can have every toy and everything they have, and they can have every gift they want. And Christmas, they can ask for things. Back then things were limited. You didn't really have a way of doing something for yourself. Yeah. So take me back to when you were a child. Like, let's just say, like, when did it turn for you? Because you directed a documentary called The Terrorist Whisper. Yeah. And at the beginning of it, you said that as a child that you were tortured and bullied. And like, when did all this start? And was this kind of what like made you click and say, I'm going to join the Iraqi military? Oh, that's like really kind of it's kind of like a click, but really didn't have much option in a way. Like to really explain it is when I went to Saddam prisons, I was 12. I was really just a young child. Yeah, I was 12 years old. I was in middle school. And when I went to his prisons, I was like very young. I didn't know what's going on in the country. I didn't know about geopolitics. I didn't understand what the president does. I had no idea, really.
Why did you go to prison?
So I refused to give money to a Ba'ath Party member, which is like a regime member in Iraq. And what happened is I ran to the wrong person, and it was a person that I should have never argued with. I should have never done anything with. He stopped me to take something out of my pocket. And I walked past him, and once I walked past him, it kind of like pissed him off. And he was a regime member. Regime members at the time, like, very powerful. They're more powerful than police officers. They're more powerful than whole society. So he slapped me pretty hard. I fell on the ground. I get up, and I cursed him, which is a big deal in our culture. And once I cursed him in a bad way, he grabbed me, threw me in the police car. But he couldn't just take a kid to prison and say, I tried to take his money. And he didn't give it to me. He couldn't tell him corruption was bad because of sanctions, Iraq. Like, even though these were regime members, they're still struggling from the sanctions. So they'll try to take advantage of anybody that's walking down the road, take whatever that's in their pocket, cigarettes or whatever it is they have. And then when I really just got thrown in the car. I didn't think big of it. I thought like maybe he'll kick my ass and let me go home. I thought I would go to a police station. It wasn't the case. Because in my head, he's just a police, officer, and there's 2 guards with him. But there's difference in tone. There's different uniform. The regime members are not really like average police officers. So the people with him were actually police officers. Him was a whole different level. The way he's dressed, the way his demeanor, his personality. So when he took me there, he wrote a report, and it's a common thing back in Iraq. It was just the environment that made people, like when you talk about conspiracy theories and all that stuff, Iraq was like that. Mm-hmm. It was very conspiracy theory drunk. An environment it created people to like do whatever, writing false reports. So what he did is he didn't say I was trying to take his money. He wrote and said this guy's trying to kill me while on duty. So that's a serious charge.
Wow. So he completely fabricated a charge.
He completely just wrote a report. I was brought into a room on a table, and they given a pen, and they like, sign here. And I remember I only read the top part, which is about maybe a sentence and a half. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it, and it says, trying to assassinate a Ba'ath Party member while in duty. And I didn't know what that was.
At 12 years old?
12 years old. And I signed it. And I thought, like, they would let me go, and this is just a fear tactic to scare me, or maybe, like, trying to kick my butt and just put fear in my heart. And unfortunately, it wasn't the case. It was actually a real prison, and it's equivalent of a concentration camp. It's called the processing station. And the processing station is in Arabic we call it tesfirat. And it's really like, the whole point of the prison is to bring you on and to process you to whatever accusation that you came in under. So if I said you're anti-government, the whole point is to find out if you are really anti-government or not. Mm-hmm. But that's not what they do. What they do is, it doesn't matter if you're anti-government or not. They have to make you anti-government so they can process you. So what they do is they basically torture you, and then by torturing you, getting you to sign more papers and give more confessions you don't have. So the torture is you're going to go through pain until you tell me what I want to hear.
Okay.
The only problem they faced when I entered that prison is I'm only 12 years old. I am not aware of the geopolitics. I'm not aware of what's going on. I'm not aware of the rivals of Saddam Hussein.
You barely entered puberty at this point, man.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And the crazy part is actually I never heard of the rivals, the groups that were outside of the country of Iraq, and they were operating against the government of Iraq at the time. And some of them were in Iran, some of them were in Jordan. Some of them were like in Kurdistan area. Some of them were in Iran. Some of them were in the UK. Some of them were in the US. And all these political groups that are speaking against, the Iraqi government. But also you have to remember, we don't have any outside world media. Mm-hmm. It's not like here you can go watch whatever you want. We only had 2 channels that Saddam ran. We were blocked from the whole world inside of a box. It was like the Twilight Zone, living in your own world. So I really don't know who the rival groups are. And what they're trying to do is basically like get me to resonate with the one group so they can say he is part of that group and he tried to do. So that way the accusation does look legitimate for them. So I was getting tortured every single day, horrifically. And until he basically, one of the interrogators that were there would say, you know what, let me help you. Let me say names for you and pick one. So it was like playing the lottery in a way. Yeah. And he was replaying the names, and he mentioned one of the rivals' names. And I kind of like played the lottery. Mm-hmm. I said that one. And he said, what part? Because they used to ask me when they torture me, what group are you part of? And I'll say, I am in 6th grade, class B in middle school. And they tell me that's not what we want to hear. We wanted you to tell us which group are you resonating. And I thought really, truly, they were asking, like, which group, like, which group in school are you part of? Yeah. It wasn't the case. It was actually they needed you to resonate with a political group that's anti-government. They have to make you anti-government. So they... basically, he repeated them, and I picked one. And I'll never forget. He said, idiot, you picked up the wrong one. You picked up the worst one, in a way. And I was like, I thought my life would be over. At the time, my family found out where I was in that prison, and they paid money to get me out.
Now, Let me. How long were you there?
A few weeks.
A few weeks, and you were being tortured every day. So
every single day until you confess. Once the confession was done, then they go into the processing. In the meantime, my family found out. My dad came in, met with the director of the prison, because of that corruption and the sanctions in Iraq. People would look for opportunities to make any extra cash, any extra money. So the deal was, my dad would go get some kind of a little bit of money, like a lot of money. And what he has to do is bring that money back to the director of the prison. And the director of the prison has the power to either submit it to the higher up, where you actually get transferred out of that prison and you go, whatever you go, you get executed, you get underground prison, whatever you go, you're done. Once you leave out that door, you're finished. Your life is over. So that was happening while all that was going on. The torture stopped once you really gave a confession. And it's just a matter of really processing you and sending you out. It was like not an average prison, like an American prison with cell and a person with you or beds. It was just a concrete house, like a concrete warehouse with a bunch of people in it. It was about like maybe 500 people in it. People all slept in the floor, very crowded.
Everybody going through the same thing that you were?
Some people have been there for a while. Some people have been there for a while. They've just not been processed. Some people are just stuck in the system. They have not been processed. They haven't been really, and some people just kept there. They were like, they're just there, and there was nothing been done. And some people, basically what I heard is actually that every time these prisons get crowded, they process people. Because when you process, you kill. That's what happened, is you kill, you send to underground prison. So it was a weird environment, very harsh environment, and the people that were running the prison were extremely, I actually always compare it to the movie Unbroken. If you watch the movie Unbroken about POWs in World War II, literally that was what it was. I would say it was a little bit more harsh. Like, when I was watching Unbroken, they let them go outside. There was no going outside. There was you really just staying inside of that prison cell. And they take you out, that you're really getting beat or something bad happening to you. And my dad brought money to him. And, I have gone in a lot of details in a previous podcast about that. And it's kind of very emotional, very scary experience for a 12-year-old. Like, I was just a kid.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. Yeah, like Unbroken was about, those were 18, 20-year-old men.
They were soldiers,
you were 12.
Yeah.
So how did you get through it every day?
Honestly, I had a prisoner at the time that was there. He was about, maybe he would say about late 30s to 40 years old. And he felt bad, like I was there. Like, he knew I was not part of anything. He knew I was just an innocent guy. He asked me what happened, and I told him, I just refused to give my money. He said, they didn't bring you here for that. Like, they're going to put something on you. And every time they took me out to get tortured, this guy would really just tells me what to do, tells me to scream as loud as possible so the voice would bother them, and then they'll let you go. He kind of knew already. He's been in there for a while.
He knew the ins and outs.
And he knew the in and out. And usually I would go to a certain side of the prison, left side. When you get out of the prison cell, you go to the left side. There's rooms that where they torture people, interrogate, and they're like the size of a restroom. Really, they're not like an actual big rooms or anything like that. And I got that day, I got my name called, and I got out and I got taken to the right side. Actually, it's where I came into prison. And I really didn't know what was going to happen, honestly. Like, once they came and got me, it was an odd time. And just to kind of backward to what kind of people there, they do like some kind of psychological disturbance kind of like to the prison. So like an example, 3:30 in the morning, between 3:30 and 4 in the morning, they'll wake us up for formation, and they call it the counting time. They just count people. And this officer on duty with his guard will come in, and it's cold. It is winter, and you have no blanket. You have nothing. You're sitting on concrete floor.
Hey, Hamody, can you do me a favor? Yeah. Put that mic a little bit closer to you.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
that's perfect, man. Perfect.
And, you get tortured, and you're sleeping on the floor. You have no blanket. It's very cold. He comes in wearing this military jacket full of fur from the inside, very warm, and he'll have like a hot tea in his hand. And I will never forget, he'll ironically start counting people. And he says, if someone fall asleep, you stand up pretty much, and he counts. And if you fall asleep, one of the guards will slap you pretty hard. And then he'll count half of the time, like in more of a ironic way. He will count half of the time, and then he'll say, oh, it's your fault. You messed me up, so I got to redo it again. And the whole point is to get you to stand up from sleeping from like 3:30 in the morning to barely like 4:45 or something. And they just get you to get up. And you're tired, you just woke up. And it's the most disturbing thing that I've ever seen in my life, and how the way they treated people. So when I actually got out the other way, my name was called, and I got to the middle of the field. There's like a field right in front of it, and the prisoner that I was with inside of the prison, before they took me, he just said to me, he said, close your eyes and pray. And he thought they were going to shoot me. Like, he thought they were going to do something to me. And when I took me down, I was handcuffed, and I will never forget the voice of that dude, the guard that was behind me. There was a slide door, which where I came into prison, like a big slide door. It's a compound that like high concrete walls and towers. You don't see what the outside world is. You don't know. It's a very classified area. And he opened that door. And there's a guy behind me, and one guard opened the door. And I remember he opened my handcuffs, and I saw my dad standing behind that door.
So that's when you knew, I'm getting free.
I was kind of like really nervous, and he said to me, like, I wanted to turn around, hoping there's a small window in that prison that this guy can see that I'm leaving. And I just kind of wanted to like let him know that I'm leaving, really. I'm not going to be here. And the guy behind me said, if you turn around, I'm going to blow your head up. And I just really kept going forward. I couldn't look. Yeah. Part of me, like my soul, wanted to look back to say, I'm good, I'm out. And I just left. And you can say, like, I didn't have a click that day. I was just trying to process to where I was living.
And 100%. He wasn't bullshitting either, right?
Oh,
he would have shot you
in
the
head.
Head.
Oh, easily. They wouldn't care. Like, they were ruthless.
They're brutal. Yeah.
So I really just walked out. And my dad was mad at me at the time. He said, you had money in your pocket. Why wouldn't you give it to him? Like, why would you just not avoid this? Like, you didn't have to go through this. And I got home, and it was just a hard transition for me, honestly. Like, I went from being an A student at school to failing all classes. Like, I failed Islamic studies, which was the easiest class. And I failed it. I had to take the exam again. And I just had zero, like, motivation to get back to school. And I ended up getting transferred to night school because I was not doing so well. And mentally, it was just not the same. Yeah. And
no shit.
Yeah, I was like, mentally it was not the same. I was not interested in learning. Yeah. I just was scared of people. You know, there were kids who their dads were member of the regime. I was too scared of them. I was like really... really nervous about anything could happen anytime. It could be the end for me. It's almost like I was walking around as a criminal with Rutgers, and I didn't commit any crimes. No. So the click really happened 2003 when I opened my door and the U.S. troops entered Iraq. And I opened my door and there was like American soldiers standing there.
How old were you?
I was 17.
17?
Yep.
Okay.
And really that was it for me.
Yeah. You say in the documentary that there's so many groups over there. So if you joined the Iraqi military, it was pretty much like a death sentence almost because you had to fight all these groups.
Yep.
And no one wanted to be an Iraqi soldier except for a select few, I guess. So what was it in you that said, you know what, this is what I want to do?
And it's kind of funny. Like, it's kind of funny you say that when you think about it. It's like Iraq was so mandatory when it comes to military that if you join the Iraqi military, nobody wants to join the Iraqi military. There were like 10 hopeless people standing in that line. Like you had to be really hopeless to be in that line. And I'll never forget something funny, and I talked about it in my TikTok, and it's a funny story that a lot of veterans love. There was a guy in the line with me, I was the youngest. A lot of these guys were way older than me. They were like born in the 60s. They were born in the 70s, early 70s. Some of them been to the Iran-Iraq War. Mm-hmm. But you had to be hopeless to be in that line. And I'll never forget there was a guy who had this long dress, like long Iraqi dress, like we wear, a traditional thing. And it was ripped off. Like, it should have buttons here all the way to his stomach. And it was, like, really ripped off all the way down his stomach. Mm-hmm. He had no shoes, and he just looked absolutely, like, not normal.
Yeah.
And that dude was on the line. It was kind of funny. A year later, we deploy together. We go to the first Fallujah battle together. We found out that guy actually ran from psych ward when the U.S. troops entered Iraq. So he went straight from psych ward to join in because he was hungry and he just didn't know where to go. He was homeless. To go.
Wow,
and he wanted a hot meal. That's what he just heard. Like the U.S., the Americans were taking military people and they're gonna give him a hot meal. And he was like, "I'm gonna try to act as normal as possible." And his name is Jalil. And it's funny. There's a lot of funny story about that dude. What he was doing. He was really definitely like when we were talking about like mentally unstable person. That dude was mentally unstable. And we gave him a gun and a pistol.
Get up there, buddy. Get on that line.
And it's kind of like funny, but I got trained. Back to Jalil. Make it fun. Back to Jalil is like I got trained by a company called MPRI, which is an American training company, and they were mostly ex-former special force operatives in Vietnam, Marine recon from Vietnam era. They were all older than we are, but they were one of the most phenomenal trainers in the world, honestly. Those guys have done such a big thing in Iraq to this day. It pays off to what they have done. They actually like created their own system of establishing the first few like three brigades of the Iraqi military. They actually established the 1st Division. So we were members of the 1st Division. And, later on we grew in divisions. We went all the way to 10 divisions to 11. Now I think there was like literally about maybe 20-something divisions in Iraq. There's a lot of them now. There's a big army. But when you're like starting, there was only a few people. There's only 300 people in front of you.
So the Iraqi military is not like it used to be. Now people want to be in it?
It's like, no, it's just like, it's like you had 300 people. These are the most hopeless 300 people in Iraq. They're starting the military. So those guys were so smart that they came in and they had a full analysis. These are war vets. They know what this needs to be done, and they recognized the fact that Iraq was under sanctions for so many years, from 1991 to literally 2003. So we're talking about 12 years of sanctions. People, 99 to 100% almost. If you look at my photos, what I look like back then, how skinny and slim, is not by choice. It's because we were hungry. Like you couldn't afford to eat meat. That was like a very rare thing you go and you get a meat sandwich. I remember like I didn't have meat for years.
Really?
And it was really hard. It was expensive. You couldn't afford it. Like to give you an example, it's kind of funny to think about it. A t-shirt in Iraq was getting paid about 3,000 dinars, which is equivalent of like literally at the time maybe like not even $5 a month.
That's a month?
A month. So think about it. 3,000 dinars. Do you know how much for a dozen of egg was at that time?
God, man. Probably
2,500. so
that's
like
your
salary, literally, like your
Wow.
salary cannot afford to buy meat. Meat was so expensive.
Damn.
Like people couldn't eat meat.
Why was it? It just wasn't readily available in Iraq.
In the country. The country was under sanctions. We're blocked from the whole world. Everything is super expensive, and people don't get paid enough. It is like a communist regime, and we were like people were struggling.
Yeah.
And I cannot forget. I mean, there are videos now. You can go watch them on YouTube of Iraqi people had bought artifacts, tables, chairs, speakers, like anything that I can see here in this room right now. They started selling each item in the black market for people who has money. And they started selling items so they can buy food with it. And that's a fact. You can go watch that.
Oh, I bet,
People were out just selling anything they go. If someone had a T-shirt or a hoodie, they'll sell it. And they just say, I'm selling my T-shirt. And they'll ask him, like, why are you selling it? And he'll say, I'm hungry. I got to get food in my family. I can't do anything with this. And that's the environment that was the sanctions. It was a serious suffer. So when MPRI came in, these veterans recognized that most of these soldiers that are coming in are weak not well fed. And the training program they have put together is absolutely like, would be deadly for us to do that. We would not be able to do PT twice a day after our training. Like, we'd not be able to do PT in the morning, go train all day, and go back and do it. We're like, we can't train hungry Special Forces operatives.
Yeah.
Our training base will turn like into a hell week, but it will be a hell 3 months because we're not fed well. We're not healthy.
You're malnourished, man. You'd be dead after one PT session.
And truly, they did something that, like, extremely important. They actually went and they contracted with a 5-star restaurant in Iraq. It's called Candles, and it's called Ashamu in Arabic, and it's candles, candles, and it's a 5-star restaurant.
Yeah,
very nice restaurant. It's almost like you're talking about Cheesecake Factory here, in the U.S. And they said, we need you to cater food for the next extra month. We'll pay you big money for it. However, we'll require a certain amount of protein every single day. And what they did, actually, it's like literally what bodybuilders eat. We were eating a lot of protein. They brought us, each company had a kitchen in it. And this contracting company took this major contract, like it was a lot of money. Yeah. It was millions. So they came in and they said, look, you'll get a couple little sides, but you'll get a lot of meat. I mean, look, a lot of us did not eat meat in years. And they say, if you get hungry, you can get another plate, but you can get more meat. And that was their deal.
Yeah.
So you can eat, but, you ate have a piece of a bread, and that's all you get. You can't get more bread.
What kind of meat were y'all eating?
We were steak.
Steak?
Yep.
Okay.
We were getting steak. We were getting kebabs, like steak kebabs. Okay. We were getting chicken kebabs. Honestly, we got to a point where we were bored of meat because we were eating a lot. And then they slowly raised the training levels. And, when I talk about it, it's really like crazy to think. Today, they established a system inside of that division. It was an equivalent of a Ranger division. And the training was so crucial that you had to do PT in the morning, and then you had to go to training all day, and then you do PT again. You had to be able to run 8 miles. You were in shape, but the more the fit you will, the better you become. And then every 2-3 days, you have to be in the range. And it's an unlimited amount of shooting. Like, there's no budgets on the bullets. You go to the range, and it's all day. Every 3 days, there's no training. There is range. And
well, you were a pretty good shot, weren't you?
Yeah,
I think that's what they said in the video.
Yeah. I was like, I just was like so bored of it that I was like, every 3 days, like you had to go, and you're not using like any sights, or you're doing eye sights. Literally, you're not doing anything. There's nothing. There's no technology. Literally, just eye sights.
Iron sights. That's
it is iron sights, and you're just really using yourself, and you build that thing with it. And today, to make a long story short, it's the only division in Iraq that has not lost a battle. And it's considered the QRF, the Quick Reaction Force of the Iraqi military. So for years, the division had no area of responsibility, meaning when Fallujah breaks out, they go to Fallujah. And we participated in the first Fallujah battle in 2004. That was the first time an Iraqi soldier came out of a training base who has been infantry trained and been properly trained to go into a war. And before us, they had local ING, which is Iraqi Civil Defense Corps. So basically, they went locally and they recruited people, and they had a company. And this company just embedded with the U.S. Army, and they would just they were not like professionally trained soldiers, didn't go through proper basic training, just a guy with a gun.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, you deploy this division to the first Fallujah battle, and everybody was looking at you as you were just the ING. You're just a Civil Defense Corps. And they really got the taste of it as soon as we got out of basic training. We went through an area. So we had to leave Karakush, which is where our base was, which is the Iranian borders. Then you got to go to cross Baghdad. And then from Baghdad, you cross to Fallujah. So it's like a long, really, you went across the country. And when we moved, we actually went through an area called Shala in Baghdad. And they thought what would be an ING patrol, but then didn't realize it was an endless 3 brigades. It was a lot of people moving. And the Mahdi militia at the time were holding that ground, that tough ground, and they engaged, but they didn't realize how many cars are in there, vehicles carried through. It was 3 brigades that are trained. So that was our first ever bullets flying on us, and we got out and we deployed, and we engaged the fight. and we really destroyed the heck out of that town. Like, we literally, you just deployed 3 brigades out, and it was just like you've been training every single day for 6 months, and now it's the real thing is about to start. And you get out, and there are no, like, everything was organized. Every squad had a leader. It was like everybody knew what they were doing. And they really learned the hard way. And they kind of were like, oh, crap, these are not the ING. These are not the Civil Defense Corps. We don't know where these come from. And we continued to Fallujah afterwards. And after Fallujah, I got pulled into Haifa Street, which was back to Baghdad, which was the most dangerous 2 miles in the world at that time.
Yeah.
And it was named Purple Heart Valley by the Americans at the time, that if you go there, you'll be guaranteed to get the Purple Heart. I actually watched some really dudes at the time. They were like really old. They were they're getting Purple Hearts over there.
Yeah, I want to touch on that because I remember in that documentary you were talking about the most deadliest 2 miles, and it was so brutal that you said that a bunch of guys that were trying to sign up for the Iraqi military, not in the Iraqi military, but they were going to sign up.
Yep.
They were killed and littered all down that 2 miles.
They got executed in public.
Wow.
These are the guys that actually got me there for that ambush that day. And, you know, to give you a little bit of that ambush, that was an ambush they set up to capture an Iraqi soldier in uniform. And what they did is they wanted to actually put some kind of fear-mongering into people so they don't join. There was a big concern about Iraqis fighting side by side the Americans. Yeah. And they needed to make sure they disable that as far as possible. So they try to kill new recruits, people who are applying to get in, but it was not effective enough. And then they would have planned to set up an ambush where they can capture an Iraqi soldier in uniform, or an actual soldier. I think, personally, they were trying to capture Iraqi civil defense soldiers. They executed these guys, expected them to come pick it up, and then the mission got assigned to us. And we went as a platoon to get it out. And actually, this battle has been filmed in video. There's another book been written about it by a guy named Jeff Morris, who was the guy who got me out of that ambush. He was like the hero that day. American captain, U.S. Army, 1st Cav unit. He entered the ambush and was able to break it after an hour and 45 minutes of a firefight. And honestly, when you look at the pictures of that ambush that day, the sniper position, everything, they had like every advantage they could to really do what they needed to do. They had the high ground, we had the low ground. You couldn't run away. The river was behind you. It was just like set up beautifully. And the person that set it up, he was a former Republican Guard officer named by, he was known as Said Hetchim in Iraq. And he set it up beautifully, where you will fight. They'll make sure any QRF, quick reaction force, responding to that firefight would not be able to make it to it. So you were just stuck inside of this hole, and you can't get out of it, and nobody's coming to get you out. Until Captain Jeff Morris and his platoon have made it in. I was injured at the time, shrapnel to the right eyebrow, shrapnel to the knee, the left knee. I switched from my right side to my left side. It was really at a point in my life I was thinking that I will probably be on Al Jazeera with someone with a knife in their hand and is going to cut my head right in front of my family watching. And literally that's what happened to my platoon leader. One of the biggest disturbing thing Jeff Morris talks about that ambush actually is when he got out of the Bradley. The first thing he saw was the body of my platoon leader being tied down to a traffic stop and with no head because he got captured alive. And it was hard. You were injured. I didn't really know how horrific that day was until the firefight was over.
Did you think that was it? That day, that ambush?
Oh, for me, it was 100%. Yeah. Like, I really thought that was it for me. And, you go through all different kind of mental stages when people pin you down. Yeah. You really go through stages. Like, you don't know, anybody tells you, I fight with anger and, I'm fighting and, it's courageous and you're great. But you do go, you get a breaking points. And that's the whole point. Was to break you down mentally and get you to give up. And if you do give up, you are absolutely that one that's going to be on TV with them beheading you. So you were going through a lot of different things in your head. At that time, I was, 18 years old, not married, no kids, and I literally, watched some of my soldiers break down. Some were injured, and I didn't know we have lost that many people at that time because I watched few guys fall down next to me. So I thought our casualties maybe like 6 or 7 guys. Actually, when I got out, it was 18 guys that were killed out of the 29, and it was hard.
Wow.
Yeah.
18 out of 29.
Yep. 18 out of 9 were murdered. I mean, if you see the sniper position in the photos, actually, the sniper position was like literally a hole this big.
Wow.
And he's the high ground. And we're shooting at him. In the picture, you'll see actually our bullets are, AK bullets, like 7.6, whatever. They were like on the side. But you really couldn't shoot a sniper, that is, above you and have a hole this big. Like, you really can't. What do you do? Yeah. And he had the most advantage. He had murdered most of my platoon. He was nasty enough to shoot in between the kidneys, basically in your kidney side, because he knew the body armor was a preventative. He knew that some of our helmets might not, get things, but he had a Dragunov sniper, so he knew it would not be effective as much going to the head. So he would shoot right here. And this
right where the
when
body
someone turns
open.
around, he'll get him right here. Because I actually tried to conduct a medical treatment of my partner who got shot by it, and the bullet went out. Honestly, it went out. It took like his kidney out, and with a hole really big, almost like 3-4 inches wide. You can't stop the bleeding. There's no tourniquets you can use. How do you really stop a bleeding in the kidney?
Yeah,
and it's deadly. It's a slow death. And at the time, you are going through all kind of mental things. I was in the middle of that firefight, and you're just really thinking like how my family would see me. And I was just like, what would be the best way to really die in this place? My biggest fear was not the enemy, honestly. Like, in all honesty, like they were they got as close as 15, maybe 10 meters away.
Wow.
You saw them, they saw you, you talked to them, they talked to you. And we ceased fire in the middle of that firefight. And when we ceased fire, we just wanted to hold as much time as possible. We conserved our ammo. We made a deal that if anybody comes in within 15 meters, we engage them. And it's only one person at a time. So we, luckily, I had about probably around 10 soldiers at the time in that platoon. Were former Peshmerga, they were former Kurdish fighters. Most of these guys, their whole entire life, been ambushed by Saddam regime. Like, these guys literally, my whole entire time is getting ambushed. Like, they are so immune to getting ambushed, like, it's nothing to them. Like, for me, I was nervous. My heart rate was going up. I would never forget there was a Kurdish guy next to me with a PKC in his hand, which is like an equivalent of M249, if those listening. And he had a cigarette in his mouth, and he never dropped the cigarette the whole entire firefight. And that's how chill he was.
Sounds like a movie character almost.
But it's just kind of like, in a way, really like, it's you're being ambushed for 20 years out of your life. And you had a regime that ran after you, and you ran up to the mountains, and you fought in mountains. That's the way they were fighting, in mountains, fighting the Republican Guard their whole life. These guys' experiences were above and beyond. Like, when we're talking about these guys were more tougher than anybody you would meet in your life. And you could put 10 people against one of them, and that one will fight to the end. And he really just didn't, he had an element, how like he had like some kind of a form of a style, like how to do it. He really like he would shoot 3 bullets only out of that machine gun at a time. And we kept holding them back. And then once they realized we're trying to conserve in our ammo, we were not engaging them as much. They tried to push really hard on us. So until Jeff Morris actually made it in with the Bradleys, and was able to use the 25 mm gun that was on the Bradley, which could penetrate through concrete where the sniper was. So if you see, actually, they have a photo with that rounds going through concrete, and was able to get into where a sniper was. So he ran away once they made it in. For me, it was like devastating day and absolutely an insanity.
Would you say that's the worst day?
It is, there's a lot of worse days, but that was definitely the worst day.
The worst day.
And I think right after the firefight is really realized that, like, you lost a lot of people. And it was a very devastating day. It was a victory day for them, for sure. Like, you did lose the battle that day.
Yeah.
But, going back to my unit, we were even more devastated that some of the people quit their jobs. They walked away. That it was fear. It was a lot of dead bodies, and that was scary enough for people to really pull away. And there's a lot of guys that were in it for money. They had kids and wives to go home to, and we understood. For me, I didn't want to go anywhere. I stayed, and I got promoted the next day by the Iraqi Minister of Defense at the time, Hazem Shalan. Called me in with a few of my guys that were injured, and I got promoted to Command Sergeant Major the next day.
And you got promoted at a very young age too, because you said, and you said that's a position that you get 25 years senior.
Yeah, I mean, it was like someone 25 years in the military, and actually it was kind of like interesting that I had a Command Sergeant Major at the time who was Command Sergeant Major in my unit. When I went back to the unit, he had deserted, and he was not part of the firefight. He actually was like, he just saw the dead bodies that went back, and the QRF that came in to get us out that day has 17 people injured. So the Iraqi QRF had 17 people injured. We had 18 guys, been KIA. They brought the bodies to the unit, and he walked out. It was not for him. So, like, I didn't have anywhere to go. I honestly just was like, okay, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'll just, like, sit here and try to process this and figure out, like, what's going to happen next. But when I got my promotion, I went back to my unit. We conducted an operation, like a counter operation in Haifa Street. Then I got moved to the Iraqi MOD per the request the Special Forces officer advisor at the time, I think goes by the name Major Waz, have noticed me that I was fluent in English and that I was, getting a reputation being in the war for a year and a half. And he requested me to come and lead the unit that was responsible to protecting the Iraqi Ministry of Defense, where they were like doing much more crucial work and much more bigger work. So that's how I end up in the MOD after my battle for promotion.
Now, you got promoted. Okay, you're 18 years old. You become Command Sergeant Major. Command Sergeant Major in the U.S. Army, that's probably a position you get after like 15, 18 years,
I got a picture, actually, a historical photo. I think you probably saw it in my documentary. And I'm standing among Sergeant Majors, U.S. Sergeant Majors. And one of them was Sergeant Major Rowling, who became the Special Force Sergeant Major in the U.S. military. He was 4th ID Sergeant Major at the time. Sergeant Major Moody, who was a Brigade Sergeant Major in 4th ID. Sergeant Major Bob, who was a Battalion Sergeant Major, and another Sergeant Major who is now, I forgot his name. He is some kind of professor at a military university. And they were all like literally not even my dad age. They were like my grandpa age. I'm standing right in the middle as their partner.
How did you feel about that when you got promoted to that position?
Honestly, it was not, you're proud of what you're accomplishing, but at the same time, it's a responsibility you don't want.
At 18,
it's lives and lives of guys that are in your hands, and not just that, they were adding new soldiers to your unit, people who have not been experienced in the fight.
And how was that as far as the way the soldiers reacted to you? Was there immediate respect, or did they go
definitely.
This guy is 18?
Or... The soldiers, absolutely, they were respectful of one another because they were well trained. The Americans had trained them. They have established this system that NCOs run the show. They do what they do. They were very respectful, very supportive. Actually, I had an advisor who was actually a former Command Sergeant Major in the Iraqi military, in the former Iraqi military, and he was way older than me. He was like in his 50s, but he was doing an admin work because he was not capable of going out to the battlefield. And especially fighting for hour to 2 hours, it's exhausting. Like try fighting for 2-3 minutes and see how exhausted you get. And he just sat in the bag and kind of advised me on how to do my administrative work and how to do my chores and check on my soldiers and do my thing. But I really got so busy that, like, God, I used to work like 72 hours, no sleep. Soldiers that are new to the fight, soldiers who have not fought before, I mean, they just graduated basic and they get added to the unit because you had casualties. They were more concerned because they're not like street trained on suicide builds, how to avoid like people how to be observant to what's going on. It was really like a very intense time in Iraq. You could look at anything and it could be a possible threat coming towards you, and you're very intense. And it was tough, you know. Running checkpoints was absolutely the worst business to have at that time, you know, because you're sitting there waiting for someone to come hit you.
And you used to do the checkpoints too. You were
yeah. So I actually had the MOD.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I had the checkpoint to the base that faced Haifa Street. So I was actually the master. I was like the kind of like the black belt in checkpoints and first protection. And because I was actually the first Iraqi to graduate the anti-terrorism first protection level 2, and I specialize in protecting the checkpoint as much as possible to avoid to make it less casualties. It's kind of hard for you when you have a lot of pedestrians coming in, a lot of civilians, and you're processing people that are coming in, and also that makes it target enough for car bombs because there's more people to kill. So you have to really create some kind of a process and designed your checkpoints in a way where if something happens, you would maybe lose a soldier or two instead of you losing 7, 8 people or 10 people. And that's more devastation to you the more people you lose. So literally we were making it the most zigzag concrete barriers where we knew that if we give casualties, we'll probably give the first layer of soldiers there towards the front. We kind of rotated who gets to the front. If you watch the picture in my book, actually taken on my cover and the one in my documentary of my poster, the way I look, I was actually looking at a pedestrian line, and a photographer snapped that picture. I was standing literally in a checkpoint in a pedestrian line, and my job was to go ahead of my soldiers and just look at people coming in. And, you know, usually, like, understanding suicide bombers at the time, they have a certain way, certain psychology about them. Like, most suicide bombers, when they come in towards your checkpoint, they're not looking at you in the face. They come and look down. They could wear jackets in the summer, which they don't need to. It's a very hot summer, so if you're wearing a coat or a jacket, it kind of tells you there's something heading behind it. So literally we would stand and watch people from, you know, a yard away and a few yards away coming in, walking towards you. And I can't imagine the feeling like you would feel. Like every day you're coming out and you're like, this could be the last day for me in this earth.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that's the reality you dealt with every day.
Every morning, literally.
You know that's going to be a possibility.
Every morning. It's like literally you walk towards that checkpoint, you'll be like, it could be the last day of my life.
Takes a special kind of person, man, to do that kind of job.
And it's like, it's not like you're attacking the enemy and you're conducting a raid in their house. Like, we did all these stuff, like conducting raids on that bad guys and going to their house. That's easy, cheesy, easy cake, right? You're attacking him in his bedroom and you're arresting him or shooting him. That's a whole thing. You sit in one place and they know where you are. That was the worst.
Every day. And it's easy for them to set up and take aim at you anywhere. And it is
crucial. Like, the checkpoint was sited next to checkpoint 1. It was actually the first layer right in front of checkpoint 1 in the green zone. Checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2 in the green zone got hit the most. The most. Actually, checkpoint 2, I was 1. 2, they like had... 2 had the truck trailers, like the dumb trucks full of C4, and they had the craziest things like you could ever see. And we were kind of like in a competition where like who really gives less casualties. And and they were like, you know, losing people, and they're like, we're only half a mile away from each other. So when one of us get hit, we can see it literally, and we really just I have a video I posted in my Instagram, my social media, when the car bomb goes off, it looked like an atomic bomb, like the way it goes to the sky, the smokes, everything. It's massive. They're not using, and you know, not to mention when they started using the second car bomb, the secondary car bomb methodology, which was extremely effective for them. Which what they will do is they will hit you with a car bomb, and it will have less amount of C4. It will injure a few people, and then once you medically respond, you'll get out trying to help people that just got blown up in front of your checkpoint. And as you get out, they hit you with the bigger one. So those were absolutely like nightmares.
No, as a command sergeant major, why were you out there?
Oh, so in our military, the command sergeant major is actually the one that takes the front, and then the commander that kind of takes the back.
They don't sit in office like...
Yeah. I mean, he can sit in office. He has a radio. He will be in contact with you. But at the time, you know, the American military had wanted me to protect 80 American advisors that were inside of the Iraqi MOD. They were between the rank of a major to a full-blown colonel. At the time, actually, we had a general too. We had General Bolger, who became U.S. commander in Afghanistan at some point as a 3-star. He was a star general at the time, in charge of a training. So we had some big people inside, and whatever was happening in my checkpoint is protecting those guys on the inside. They were coming from the green zone to this building, but I'm protecting the worst side of that place in there. So I had a front line. I had, and all the actions will be taken there. And all the damage will be taken there.
Well, you don't come across as a person I would think would want to sit in office anyway.
And I cannot sit in office. I'm glad I wasn't, honestly. I had redesigned my concretes at the time, barriers, redesigned things, and worked hard, welded a lot of the towers because a lot of the towers we needed to make sure they were anti-RPG. So we put all this nets around. Metal nets all around the towers. We try to do everything as possible. We built the most massive speed bumps you can ever think of, honestly, and we're trying to protect ourselves as much as possible. And there's a photo in my Instagram. I will never forget that day, and it's me walking in between 2 car bombs. Like 2 car bombs that just blow up, and you can see the body that's left over of the car bombs and the damage. And I'm walking right in between, and I'm holding a patch. A soldier patch that died that morning.
You can see all these on your Instagram.
Oh yeah, it's my Instagram.
And your Instagram is
Hamody
Jasim.
Yeah, I used to be the terrorist whisperer. Now I'm Hamody Jasim because the name, the terrorist whisperer, that it's kind of bad. They wouldn't let your
get flagged for it.
Really, I didn't want to red flag, so I changed it. That's why. But if you think about it, really, I was walking that day and I lost a soldier. Secondary car bomb was absolutely massive. Lost more people. And I felt bad for that one soldier. He was just in the army for not even a few months. And he got killed. And he heroically tried to respond to help some people medically. And the second one came in. He had no time to get in. And it was, just a day that was it. That was a day in your life. You knew every single day between 7 o'clock to 7:20, you are going to get hit. And
damn, you just knew it was going to happen.
You know it's going to happen. You know you're going to lose some of the faces you briefed that morning. That is guaranteed. You knew that at that point. You knew once you give that brief in the morning, when shifts change and you look at some of the faces, you were a couple of these guys probably would not go home today. And my job was to really be there for them, motivate them, and at a certain point, I had to go in front of them because, it would not be fair for me to be standing in the back and behind maybe layers of concrete barriers. And I'm asking one guy to go be the front sacrifice because he has to check the badges of the people coming in. And that is the worst job in the world.
The most astonishing thing about all this is you're 18 doing all this.
Yeah, you're a kid, but then you lose your childhood, though.
Yeah.
You lose.
You have to mature very fast because, I know a lot of 18-year-olds now.
Yeah, I would say I wasn't 18 at that time. I probably was 45.
Yeah.
I was not 18. And I didn't have the mentality or the capacity to be 18 years old.
Physically, you were 18. Mentally, you were well beyond your years.
Yeah, and it's just it's not like that, I had superpowers that others didn't have. It was just a responsibility that my job was to be in the front, and my job was to make sure these guys are motivated. I mean, how do you motivate a guy saying, look, man, you have to go ahead of all of us. You're going first. That's a tough one. It's a very tough position.
Yeah.
It is tough out of you to ask to saying you need to go stand where all your teammates got killed last night. And it's your turn to go do it. That is tough, man.
Yeah.
That really is so sometimes, and you see in this photo here too, that's actually outside of the checkpoint. That's in the red zone. And I would walk out, and I would just really walk out, and I will try to give them motivation that they're not alone, and I was with them too. Imagine every single car that passes by you that day is a possible car bombs. And
trying to get that picture on the screen here.
Yeah, no worries.
Let me. That's the one thing about doing your own podcast, man. You have to be the host and the producer all at once. So that could kind of suck.
I've been getting invited in podcasts like nonstop.
Oh, I can imagine, man.
It's like, no, just the recent one about talking about terrorism, and everybody wants to like have your take on what's going on.
Yeah. So this picture right here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, I'll walk every single day. That would be my day. And honestly, you know, it changed me. That experience has changed me the way I became the biggest profiler in the world. I would be profiling people.
Yeah.
I would look at an old man that probably had a bag full of fruits, and I would absolutely think the worst of that man.
Something's
like
in there.
He had a bomb, and my hand would be on the trigger, and they will get nervous, and I get nervous, and I used to feel bad. Some people I used to really take aggression against, and realize they have nothing. They're just innocent people. They're going by, and I felt so bad, like for some people, that I had to show that side of me towards them, and.
Well, I get it. If you don't, man, the first time you don't do it, first time you show complacency, boom.
Oh, yeah. You get weak for 1 second in that environment, you lose people.
Yeah.
And I wasn't losing normal people. I was losing people who had kids and had people, they depend on them. So it was a very big responsibility. And, you know, protecting not only those 80 American advisors on this side, we were protecting a lot of other people. And you have to protect the people that are coming in as well. Well,
let me talk about this. Now, I'm terrible with names. I can't remember the guy's name. But there was a part in your documentary where you were there was a guy, he lived in a bad part of town, but you said he was not getting assassinated, so you knew he was a part of that. He was playing double agent. Now, that's when you found, well, I'll let you tell the story, because this was...
after that, I got involved working with the U.S. intelligence community. As my experience in that building is that building was crucial. It's the MOD, it's the equivalent of the Pentagon.
Okay.
All political party, all the geopolitics, all bad people, terrorist organization wants to be part of this because that's the biggest budget in the country in Iraq at the time. You had the biggest budget in the country. It's almost here like you have the Air Force, and it's the biggest budget in the country. The Iraqi Ministry of Defense was the biggest budget in the country. Security was everything down there. So you, everybody's part of it. So they found that you are literally like in a place where you can process information and be aware of who's who and what's this. And, you know, when Americans entered Iraq first time, everybody thought they knew everything about Iraq. And then it took them not even a few months, and they were like, oh, crap, these guys really don't know who's who. So the enemy really advanced in. And I got involved and I kind of became like an intelligence source for the U.S. intelligence at the time. And my job really was not to like spy on people, was more of like to process information for them, or to clarify things for them that they needed to process. So like, it's not like I went to the agencies. The agencies came into me and said, hey, I'm doing this and that. What do you think of it? And you would give them like the right advice. And then slowly it turned into a job. And I was like literally spying on bad individuals and bad apples that are coming in to become part of the government. I can assure you we had everything in that building. We had Iranian operatives. We were working undercover. We have members of Al-Qaeda. We have members of the Naqshbandis. These are names you never heard of. Naqshbandis, Battle Corps. Every terrorist organization you think of, there's a group in there. And it's just, what's the difference between these groups? What is the goal of each of these groups, right? You had the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, which is now ISIS, known as ISIS. They were back then called the Islamic State. They were led by Zarqawi. Those are the most dangerous people you could not. They only have one goal in their life: is not to control a position, not to make money. Their goal is to kill as many Americans as possible. So these guys were America's number one enemy, and you had to really ensure the safety of the people inside, because these are high-ranking American officers walking around this building with a 9mm. They're not technically in a combat zone. And believe it or not, like, not all these guys were like a special forces operatives to really put them alone among 3,000, 4,000 Iraqi employees on their own. Some of these guys were like National Guard officers, reserve units. Some were like active duty, but they were like, training officers, administrative, logistics. It was not a fighting environment for them, right? They're not trained to survive among the enemy. And of course, if you told them like, "Hey, there's members of Al-Qaeda in the building," they would freak out. They literally freak out. And Your job is to make sure they come in, they leave on time, and the other side leaves from the other side. And it's like, really, it's the hardest job in the world at the time, to be honest. It's like, how do you protect a building from the outside when the enemy's already inside of it? It just makes no sense in a way. Like, yeah, I get hit by the operatives of Al-Qaeda in the morning to the front line, but the undercover operatives are already. It is just like, you think about it, you're like, what in the hell I'm going to do with this? Mm-hmm. You got one that's attacking me physically in the front, and you got one that's collecting on me, and they're both there. They're both can cost you damage, and actually the ones on the inside cost more damage than the ones on the outside.
So the ones on the inside, there's also American officials in there too.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is very, like, when I tell you it was the most dangerous job in the world, or crucial. It was dangerous. The responsibility was scary. Like, I had protected the building and made sure that nothing could come in. But I want you to think of the Minister of Defense, the Iraqi Minister of Defense, sits on the second floor in that building. And, of course, all his entourage protects it like no one business. And I'll give you two stories that will, freak you out in there. Mm-hmm. One is, we get Congress members that visit Iraq at the time, and they would come meet the Minister of Defense. So when we get a U.S. delegation, like, we had the Australian defense minister, we had the UK defense minister come in, and we had the U.S. defense minister comes in, like, down Dramasfold. High officials, 3-star, 4-star generals will come visit the Minister of Defense or the Chief of the Joint Staff. How do you get these people in the building when you know there are apples right behind the door? It is really hard. So every time we get a U.S. delegation comes in, like a Congress member visiting or a government official, we would literally curfew the whole entire building. We'll tell people to stay inside of their department. You can't get out. Mm-hmm. And we'll secure one hallway for them to come in and come out. And I would get in touch with, at the time, either the Secret Service who were on the ground by the embassy, or whoever that is, the Blackwater guys that were in charge protecting some of these individuals. And I'll get in touch with a security detail. They will send a first layer of people with a dog to secure the area that I already secured for them. And then they show up, and then we just block it from the whole world. That meeting would go for 20, 25 minutes, and then we walk them out. So every time one of these people came in, you really had to manage at a certain level. The other story is just to kind of show you, it's kind of funny. So we established an MOD email, which is .mil for U.S. Army. Mm-hmm. And the Minister of Defense himself received an email, a threat from Al-Qaeda from our own building. so it was
didn't have to look far to trace that.
And I brought a guy in my podcast who was in charge of that, the agency. I brought him to work, and we called him Sheikh Arun, codenamed the most dangerous hacker in the world. I brought him on my podcast, The Black Side Show, and he was in charge of figuring out all this, who these people are. He was the IT in charge. He was a very good hacker, and you would think the Minister of Defense in his own ministry, in his own office, received a threatening email from Al-Qaeda in the same building. And they used an MOD computer. So there is no direct message you can get from an MOD, equivalent of DOD email, and from your building.
So what happened?
The minister literally shit his pants.
Did they do anything?
We actually located, and by the time we located where the email came from, it was a department full of people. There was about 150 people in there. And we walked in, we're like, where is the person that was using this computer? I just stopped. And they said, oh, there's a guy here, used it, asked us to use it. We don't know what happened. He disappeared. And we're like, okay. So we're just in a point where it was really, really hard. And my job was to protect these advisors. And back to your question, is to make sure that the building is protected, to make sure the U.S. is safe. But then it was an opportunity for the U.S. intelligence to actually start understanding who is who, and who is X, Y, and Z, and which group, and start designating the groups one at a time. And there was a lot of attempts of things. There was a lot of things that happened over the years. But one of the biggest things that I was doing is building the database for the U.S. government of who's who and the motives behind these groups. So, you had the Iranians at the time who were, and I meant what I said, like the operatives on the inside caused more damage because actually the operative in the inside knew everything. And at the time, we would have at least about 100. You could say 60 to 100 black banner hanging on that building every month. And the black banners means when someone get killed or get assassinated, they'll hang his name on the wall with a banner look like piece of a thing, and they'll say his name and when he passed. Okay. And the banners continue to be hanging every single day, and those were Iraqi officers and Iraqi employees that went home because they worked 9 to 5, and when they went home, someone shot them. So those guys on the inside kind of cleaned house of all the good people who wanted better Iraq, and if you didn't belong to a group, you were gone. We're talking about Iraqi generals, and they took over the positions inside of that building because if you nominate 2 people to a certain position and the third one is a bad apple, they'll assassinate and eliminate the first 2 guys. So you had no options. So they were doing nasty work inside of that building, and it was pretty hard for me to do my job, protect the front line, and then at the same time spy on these enemy operatives and try to figure out who they is and try to hand it over to the U.S. intelligence. So I had multiple jobs when I was there.
Now, at this time, you weren't leaving this building, right? You didn't leave to go live in a house anywhere,
man. Yeah. Nowhere. I was locked inside of that prison, and I was locked inside of that place, and I knew where my limits were. And at the time, I couldn't go home. I couldn't go anywhere. My job was pretty crucial. I couldn't talk to my family. I couldn't be anywhere. I was just in that building, survive every single day. Every day is a new day.
Because no doubt, if you'd have left the building, you probably would have been killed.
Oh, if I leave outside of the wire 1 inch, I'll be killed.
Yeah.
I couldn't take that uniform off. I couldn't put that gun down. And I really just, I say back then I kind of just was convinced that if I was going to die at some point, and, it didn't matter when it was. And I really lived my life to the fullest. And every day I would come out and I'll crack jokes and I'll talk to my friends and I'll talk to my soldiers, and it was a normal work day. Yeah. But I was kind of like, if I make it to 2007, we'll be great. And 2007 comes in, we're like, well, I made it. Well, let's see if we can make it to January 1st of 2008. And it really went in, but 04, 05, 06, 07 were absolutely insanity.
And while you were in there, you found a suicide vest.
We found a suicide vest. We had members of Al-Qaeda try to kidnap one of the advisors from the building. It was just a very tough environment to have enemy in the inside. And at the end, I ended up working for some people in the intelligence community who I helped them build the database of Iranian operatives, which eventually led to making it to the presidential briefing for the president of the United States. And it was just a place that, you had an endless war, and you had a lot of enemies and not a lot of help. And honestly, I was lucky to walk out of the place in 2008 alive. I think the biggest miracle in my life is I walked out of that building alive. The pressure on the last 6 months of me being in there, once they realized I'm some sort of a U.S. spy in that building, they really went hard. They put their differences in the side, and their only mission was to eliminate me. And
that was causing other people around you to be affected by it. Well. Yeah. So that's kind of what, hey, I need to get out of here.
And I knew, me staying was I'm going to cause damage. If they couldn't kill me, they'll kill people around me.
Yeah.
And I really got to a point where it was healthy for me to make the decision to leave. I mean, I cost them a lot of damage, just exposing them, building the database of them, and truly handed the idea to the U.S. intelligence about who these people are. They were extremely pissed. It's not like I was a guy that went home every night. They can assassinate me in the way home. That's what they did for everybody. I was a soldier, and I was surrounded by many guys. And I had a team of fighters around me that were highly, highly, highly trained. They were all great operatives, and they couldn't just infiltrate that. They couldn't really do anything. So they knew that would be impossible to get rid of me. And actually, the only way was for me to get attacked on the inside by somebody. And, there's so many of them inside of the building. I was always armed at all time, always loaded, and I was always ready.
You were formidable, I bet. Ain't nobody fucking with you. You're probably formidable. You've been through all that.
Pretty much ready. My pistol had inside of the building, even like when I go room to room or something like that, my pistol had all hella points in it. Yeah. And we were really like prepared. We don't know where it's gonna come from, And when I say like I was profiling really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I will look for someone from distance, and the closer they get, the more tense I get.
Well, I'm sure that doesn't go away, man. I still profile people to this day. Man. So
it was really hard. Like I still try to work on myself today from that. Like because when you work in the intelligence sector, you're profiling the whole entire time, and you're not doing it for a day or two. You're profiling for 6 years. You're sniffing terrorists. You are going to think everybody is a bad person. You're gonna think everybody has something.
Yeah.
Somebody could come in with a bag, and my eyes would be locked in that person. It would be like just a bag of clothes, nothing like that.
Now,
ideas would come through my mind, and
I'll bet
the way I look at people, and some of these people are nervous, they're scared because the way I look at them, and it just changed me who I am. It changed the chemistry in my brain. I was too young. I was like too. I was not supposed to be in that place, that's not where I was supposed to be at that age. Now I see people my age and what they do with their lives. And, in 2005, I got pulled to Germany for a couple months to train. And I was in Vilsik, a U.S. Army base, 3 hours out of Frankfurt.
Biggest freaking pigs I've ever seen are in that place.
Honestly, I went to Wiesbaden, and I was getting escorted by an intelligence officer. She's now actually a full-blood colonel in the U.S. military, about to make a general, and I was being escorted by this lieutenant, and with her intelligence officers, and she said like, "Hey, do you want to go to a nightclub?" And I said, "I've never been to one." Before.
To a what?
A nightclub.
A nightclub.
And I've never been to one before. And they took me to Wiesbaden, and they kind of released me out to the nightclub.
Yeah.
And look, man, I was an Iraqi guy that's been at war for 2 years and a half, fighting brutally, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't like a 17-year-old who was in love and had a date and was having a high school fun time. I was in war.
You probably didn't even have a girlfriend.
None.
That whole time.
Yeah, my only girlfriend was my gun. That's it. And they released me, and the one shocking thing for me, there was a lot of beautiful girls in there, and the one thing shocking thing that really, I kind of, to describe it, I was actually very emotional when I walked in the nightclub. I saw people like my age, and it was my first reality check of knowing what people my age do in their lives. And I walked in, and I watched a bunch of kids having fun, and I walked in, and I felt guilty that I was here while my people are like, my soldiers are getting hammered every single day. They're getting shot at, and they're getting killed and getting blown up. And it was weird emotions for me to walk in, and I'm like, wow, like people my age are really kids. Like me outside of that uniform and that body armor and that Kevlar, I'm just a child. And yeah, that was like my reality check out there, to see like what people my age were doing. And it was hard. I feel like I was robbed out of my childhood, and it was robbed out of my young age. You know what I mean? Like people did what they did, and not many people in the world says, when I was 18. I had fun. I did this. I went out with this girl. For me, it's like when I was 18, I had 2,500 soldiers I had to be responsible for, and I have lost people every single day. It was hard and not easy.
Where's the movie? You would think you'd have a movie about you, man. That's a pretty good story.
Honestly, like I would care less about, now that I'm older, I couldn't care less about. I think biggest thing for me is really, right now that I'm facing, I wouldn't say a war, but the average American lacks understanding of counterterrorism. And I would hate to see the American people to be misled by false information, or to start thinking like, people of certain background wants ill for the country, or any of this stuff. It's like so I'm actually put myself on a mission to educate the American public on counterterrorism, because counterterrorism is one of the worst topics in the world. Because the more I give you, it's like a drug. It's like the more I give you, the higher you get. And it's dangerous when you see people that are not experts in it and they're not trained in it, or they are more of like, conspiracy theorists, or they're just trying to get clicks or views, and it can turn society into a very dangerous zone.
Yeah.
And it's hard because, we here in America, we get hit by terrorist attacks and stuff like that, and we don't understand it. We don't know. So just being who I was and what my expertise were in the field, and working with the intelligence community, I wanted to really, my goal and mission, I wanted to educate the average American citizen on how to combat this. Because truly, combating counterterrorism, it does not start with a gun. I see a lot of these people out there in podcasts talking about training and talking about, it's good. You could train. It's pretty good for you, right? I mean, I'm all about that. But to combat counterterrorism, it goes way beyond the gun, and it's education. And it really takes a lot of psychological experiments. It takes a lot of education. It takes a lot of topics that within the United States that you have to pay attention to. There's a lot about terrorism that psychologically related. There's a reason why most terrorists are between the age of 18 to 22 years old. There's a reason why 75% of terrorist organizations since 1970 did not even make it a year into their ideology, and then they end up fading out. There is like a reason why terrorists focus on people that are being bullied or being isolated from society, or people have anger against Western society. So there is like, the war is no longer in the field. The war is now digital, and it is a serious war because they no longer need explosive and C4. All they need is really a phone and internet access, and they're able to manipulate somebody and turn him into a fighter or an attacker. So what we're facing is something very serious. And I have a daughter in this country, and I really want to see my child have a safer environment. For her.
Case in point, man. I mean, we just had a terrorist attack in New Orleans, and this guy was a veteran. He was a staff sergeant in the Army. So it just like you said, man. Like, what changes these people? Like, this guy. It gets to you when you think that someone that you considered a brother, and a fellow serviceman, can actually go over to ISIS like that. And
there's a lot of reasons to it. Isolation, anger. A lot of what you watch online makes you angry. I mean, you never see me out there telling you like, hey, go to certain things and be angry against that. Or there's a lot of anger. If you notice, like if you really take a high look at what's going on the internet today, there's a lot of fear mongering and anger. And you already have a lot of veterans with PTSD and anger and disappointments on their own government, on their own system. That is an easy window for ISIS, for Al-Qaeda, or any radical organizations to start looking into that. I mean, makes sense for them to start doing that. They call it the lone wolf operation in the intelligent world. And what they'll do, they'll basically give them these people the tools, and they'll give them the dollar. They have like channels on Instagram. Not Instagram, and Telegram. They have like channels on Telegram that could teach them how to do something, how to conduct an attack. The lone wolf, these are people that will take action on their own. Actually, recently ISIS had created maybe about 14 different infographics to test to see how people are reacted to it, like with big words. Seeing would angry people more resonate, would people been bullied by society or more resonate, who would resonate more with it. And see, look, this is a very smart psychological organization. They don't just fight. They don't just want to kill us. They plan ahead of time, and they have an understanding of who they really can tap into. We need to work on this socializing. Like, we need to work on these issues. And as I mentioned, the gun is not going to stop these attacks. Like we can train like a special forces every single day. They're not going to stop killing us. The only way we stop them is by fighting their ideology with the same way they're using it. And that is very crucial. And, ISIS specifically does not need camps anymore in Afghanistan. They can't have it anyway in Afghanistan. They don't need bases anymore. All they need is internet access, and they're going to be hidden. They're going to be really sleeping in our laptops and in our DMs, and that's what's scary. So mental health is a problem. Being isolated is a problem for a lot of people. Creating anger to make angry people more angry, that is also dangerous. Yeah. So we have to be careful to what we promote out there.
And the American people, you've been here long enough. You've been here since 2008. You've been through what? Obama.
Yep. I've been
Trump,
through
Biden.
All
so,
that,
yeah, you've been through all that mess. And, the leadership that we have is so, like, I don't trust the leadership that we have, man. Like, I mean, for case in point, the chief in New Orleans, did you see the press conference she had after the guy took his truck and ran through the streets?
Wow.
Yeah, she says things like, we had these barriers, but I didn't know about them. That's great leadership right there. And, of course, she's what we call one of those DI diversity employee hires. Wow. Yeah, because she was a chief in California, and she lost her job there, and then they hired her on in New Orleans.
Wow.
So, and then it's just like the blind leading the blind everywhere. So what kind of confidence do we have in our leaders that they have the right people in place that can counter terrorism,
it's a very tough job to do, man. I don't expect much from people who don't understand it. But I hope that we educate the public. I hope that we create an environment that's a safe environment. And terrorist organizations are no longer people of certain color or certain background. Yeah. Now they're recruiting people from all over the world. They have Belgians, they have Germans, they have Dutch, they have Chechens, they have Russians, they have everything.
Yes, they got people that look just like me.
And that's the case. And they can do it to anybody. Yeah. So,
So you got here in 2008. You started how did it come? How did you adjust? Everybody's like wanting to talk to you. You want interviews left and right.
Honestly, I released my book in 2015 to 16, and I worked in military contracting for a while, training people in PSYOP in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and at the time, and at the base. And I just really got to a point about 3 years ago. I just was done to walk away from all of it, man. Yeah. I was just mentally, I was in that thing for so many years.
You still talking, giving lectures? Or?
I do. I still do speaking events. I do a lot of speaking tours, military balls, Marine balls a lot. My story's connected to the Marines, obviously. But I got to a point 3 years ago, I needed to walk away from all of it. I needed to,
start a new chapter.
Yeah. For my own health, I need to be like a regular guy and just really go and live my life and have a normal life because, I lost a lot of years of my life between war and prison and coming here and then dealing with TBI, traumatic brain injuries, and PTSD and all that. I mean, life is too short.
Yeah, man.
To spend 37 years of your life just struggling.
Yeah.
And I was just done with the struggle. And I left my job when I was doing in Fort Bragg, and I said, I'm done. I needed to walk out. And I didn't care what I was going to do. I was just like, it's time for me to go live my life. Yeah. It's time for me just to go chill and sit by the fire and stare at the stars, and that was a big deal for me. That was like a big deal for me. I was like, I need peace, and I don't have that peace, and now I'm trying to learn to condition myself to the peaceful environment. As you know, there's a saying that says, only those who died saw the end of war. The war will always chase you to the rest of your life. It is a period that you get addicted to something and your dopamine is high and you're waking up every single day with the rush and the dopamine high, and then all of a sudden you come to a very slow, boring environment, and it's on you to get yourself back to normal. It's hard.
Do you still worry to this day that you got your head on a swivel looking behind you? Maybe somebody's.
Oh yeah, I mean that's always a possibility, man. There's always a possibility out there, and what terrorists are doing right now, doing these lone wolf operations, these are dangerous, man. I used to worry about an operative coming from across the borders to come after me. but now they don't have to do that. Now it's here at home. So it's and my only weapon to combat this is to educate. I can't shoot bullets in this war, man. That's the thing. You know, this is not an ammo war. So I have to educate, you know. And, you know, whatever happens to me, happens to me. You know, I believed in my cause since day one. I have no regrets about anything I have done. And, you know, sometimes God will put you in positions where, you know, you are instructed to do a certain job, or you've been designed, or you've been born to do something. And that was my call. That's what I was meant to be.
Now, since you've been here, like, what's the I guess the most fun thing you've done as far as like Americanized stuff? I mean, you did all that growing up, so I'm sure you come to America, you're like, it's time to live a little.
I've done some things. I mean, I don't believe it or not. I go to Disney World. My buddy there, Army vet, Matt Zellner. He runs a hotel in Disney World. I end up going to Disney. I went to Montana. I did a speaking event there. I was pretty stoked to watch Montana. My favorite place have been in the United States so far have been San Diego. California. That's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it is. I've been there one time, but
it is gorgeous.
I went to the border. That was it.
Oh, no,
it was
I traveling and seeing part of the country. I went to like Iowa, Idaho. Idaho is one of my favorite spots in the United States as well. Kiddos to all these people. I did a couple events in Idaho, in Boise.
You've been to all the states I haven't been to. I haven't been to Montana or Idaho.
I've been around. I mean, when I went on my movie tour, you know, my documentary tour, and I went on book tour, I was fortunate to really like visit a lot of places and connect with veterans from different sides of that country in the country. And yeah, Idaho was my favorite. The people there are awesome. Montana, I did a lot of speaking events in Texas. Texas is a whole different animal in the United States. They have their own country. When I was fighting in Iraq, I had a unit from Texas. They gave me a Texas passport.
Okay, Texas passport.
I thought it was real. Like I thought it was like.
I mean, it should be. It's his own country anyway.
Like I thought it was like, wow, I got a passport, and then it was like a fake passport for like people saying Texas is its own country. And you know, Texans are very good people. They have such a good ethics about them. You know, like they have a code of honor. They have, you know, a pride about being from Texas. Some of the bravest people, you know, I met in the military serving with me happen to be from Texas. You know, not to take away from anybody, you know, you have the crazy New Yorkers, so you cannot underestimate those guys. Those guys are just naturally born crazy. And, you know, I worked
you got to be to live there.
I worked with a lot of guys from Rhode Island, a lot of guys from New York City, and they're just a different people, and they're like there's always shit going on in their lives. So when them showing up to the battle zone, it was just nothing different. That's their life every day. They'll wake up every day angry, something going on, and you know, it's just like, and then they bring him to Iraq, and I'm like, well, you know, it's the same environment for you, pretty much. You know?
Being in the position you're in, you know, being who you are. Have you met anybody that's pretty famous, any A-listers? Did you get a chance to meet the president?
I did not get a chance to meet the president. I did meet Don Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense at the time, in Iraq, actually. I got to see a lot of Congress members. Honestly, some of them, I didn't even know their names. I didn't know what they would do for a living. I was like, whatever.
Me either, man.
I didn't know who they were. Met a lot of people. Probably with Don Rumsfeld was absolutely crucial. I met General Petraeus. I met General Casey. I met General, literally all the 4-stars that ever came to Iraq. Big names that I got to see in the military community. General Gorelli, General Martin Hartling. I mean, you're a 6-year war, and every year you get 2 or 3 division commanders deploy, 2-star generals, and you get 4-star there. John Martin Dempsey, he became the chief of the Joint Staff.
You had General Petraeus in your documentary.
And I could have more, you know. Like, I worked with a lot of big names. You know, one of my advisors in the MOD was John K. Love, was a lieutenant colonel all the time. He retired as a 3-star Marine. A lot of big name men. Big people. They made huge careers. The one that probably closer to me will be Major Megan McClog, the highest ranking Marine female to be killed in action in the Iraq War. She was my mentor when I was 17 years old. And I dedicated my movie and my book to her.
I saw that. It was at the end of it.
Yeah. And I dedicated my whole story to her, you know. And she was an absolute, you know, superhero. She went so many marathons and so many Ironmans, and she just was a superhero, you know, because someone we really looked up to. And yeah, that was my time, and I met a lot of people. There was a lot of people who you met as normal people, and then later on in life they become legends, and they become people that are you tell their stories, and at the time you meet people you don't know what they're going to be one day.
Well, you are like the first person I've ever had on my podcast. It was on the Bet David show. So, I mean, that's kind of big right there because, I mean, next to Joe Rogan, to me, he's my second favorite show, man.
Patrick works hard, and his people are absolutely spot on, man.
Self-made millionaire, man.
Yes. And that's a true dream, and that's a true example of what an immigrant could do in this country. And Patrick Bet-David is an immigrant, came to this country in a young age, joined the army, made a big difference in his life, and if he can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, he started an insurance company, and I think he said he sold it for like $200 million or something like that. A lot
more than that, actually.
A lot more,
way more than that. Yeah, back in the billion. And he's look, like that's what just goes to show you. And he didn't get this easy. He was at some point of his life, he was some 21-year-old broke with nothing, and he says that a lot, and he's still becoming who he is. And,
he's fairly young too. I think he's 46. So,
yeah, I mean he built himself from bottom, and it just shows you that the life we have in America is very blessed, and you could be sky's the limit in the United States. Yeah. You could do whatever you want, and that's why I tell a lot of veterans out there, like stop beating on yourself, stop believing that you went to Iraq for the wrong reason. Everything happens for a reason. Today, Iraq is a lot different, a lot better, more infrastructures, more mall, better generation, better people that are like not anti-West, they're super nice, and you are part of a big cause. Don't worry about the politics. Don't worry about who sent you there. You went there. You made a difference in that place. Did you make a difference while standing in Iraq? Yeah, absolutely, you did. Don't let anybody, any voice out there in any podcast or any show tells you, you got used and your life is far away from the truth. Oh. Man, that's an example to show you, Patrick Bet-David. You can come home and you could do anything you want with your life, and be who you want to be.
Yeah, I want to. My mouse just died. That's perfect. It must be a sign. Hold on, let me see if I get this thing working. Yeah. Because I want to. There we go. All right. So you have a documentary out there. It's on Prime. You can rent it. You can buy it for $14.99. You can rent it for, I think it's $4.99.
Yes, sir.
And I watched it today, actually, and I think this is like a little snippet from it.
Yeah.
So we'll play this. I think it's like 2 minutes. We'll give everybody a little. Yeah. Now, YouTube's not going to destroy me, are they? They're going to flag me or copyright or anything like that?
No.
I'm like, I got the guy right here that made it. So, I mean.
I don't think I would do that.
Because sometimes they can be kind of trifling, man.
No, you go ahead, yeah.
All right. Let's.
When I was introduced to him, people would say to me afterwards, he's been in some
everything from counterintelligence initiatives to recruiting of sources inside the Iraqi forces who could alert us to potential problems.
And he became one of our first serious intel sources within the ministry.
You were just confused. You had so many terrorist groups that was operating to take power of the Iraqi MOD. And on top of that, you were not just fighting them, you're also fighting for the U.S. interests in this conflict.
There were 53 dead civilian bodies due to violence every 24 hours in Baghdad alone. That's just in the nation's capital. So you can imagine how difficult the situation was.
We've got this solid information. This guy's in a great spot. He's got people he can rely on to feed him good information. And you can basically walk down the street and talk to him.
And every secret the U.S. intelligence learned about, it was putting their plans behind.
We had sources of information that were golden, that kept the JSOC teams, that kept NNFI and 3rd Infantry Division in a target-rich environment for a year.
And all we really knew at the time was there's bad guys in the building. Some of them we think are aligned and affiliated with Group X. Others we think are aligned with Group Y and Z.
The bad guys know who you are. They reach out to you. They contact you. Hey, we're going to kill your family if you don't quit. I'm not quitting.
One of the key reasons his life was not just on the line, but forfeit. We knew there were standing kill orders on him.
There it is. The Terrorist Whisperer, folks.
Thank you.
Make sure you go to Prime. If you got a Prime account, go there, rent it, buy it. That way you can watch it over and over, because if you rent it, you can only get it for 48 hours, I believe. And you also have a book out. The Terrorist Whisperer also. And people can follow you on Instagram at Hamody
Jasim. Yep.
Hamody with a space.
Hamody /
Yeah.
Jasim. Jasim.
Yeah, man.
Yes, sir.
And one more question, man.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You could have moved anywhere in the country, probably, right? Why did you choose this area in North Carolina?
At the time I came to Bragg, and I just kind of ended up here. I was living up north, was a little miserable from the weather and cold. I have a plate and screws on my left leg, shrapnel. I just was not good environment for me. So actually I wanted to come either towards Florida, and I ended up here in North Carolina. And I like it here so far, honestly. Yeah. That I have a little girl here now, and I really, I think this is I could say that I can call North Carolina home.
Oh, that's cool, man. We kind of hang out at the same places. I seen you at Cardinal one time, and I don't really go there anymore because I got kicked out one time.
And you did? I'm sorry to hear that.
Well,
I don't either. I don't go. When I just being a single guy and you go out of places, but I don't like to go out that much anymore.
Me either, man.
To all these bars and running to, especially small towns, you run into the same people over and over.
Well, there's the one place downtown, 41st Street, Street Tavern. Yeah, I like that place.
It's good, very cozy.
I know a guy, Mike Brock, that does the DJ in there, and he has
Mike is a friend of mine.
So everybody knows everybody around here, man.
Everybody's a small town. Very small town.
I went to Cardinal and got completely drunk 2 years ago for my 47th birthday.
Oh wow!
And I don't know what happened to me, man. People told me I did things that I don't remember. And I woke up in my bed with no clothes on. And
oh God!
I'm like, how did my clothes get off? And anyway, yeah. But they told me I got kicked out of Cardinal, so I really haven't been back since.
That's a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, Hamody, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you spending this time. I know you got other things to do and other
appreciate it.
Big podcasts to be on. Hopefully, you'll be on Rogan one day, man.
I hope so. I think Rogan would be amazing.
Oh man, yeah, you could definitely go 3 hours with that dude, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, bro. Hey, check him out. Instagram. Bye, everybody.